This is the Be Quiet Shadow Base 800. Wait a minute, here we go. This is one of the larger 7-slot PC cases you can buy, with plenty of airflow and good looks to accompany it. And you can think of this as a nice middle ground between the 900 series from Be Quiet and the 500DX and FX, which you've seen many times on this channel. And in this video, we'll deep dive into the Shadow Base 800, talk about hardware support, some of the things I like and don't like, and then we'll throw a PC build in to round things out. Are you ready? Stay with me. If you're sick of seeing that same Activate Windows watermark over and over, head on over to VIP SCD Key, where they have Windows 10 and 11 Pro OEM keys at a fraction of the price of retail. Just use a secure payment method like PayPal, enter your product key into your PC settings window, and say bye-bye to the watermark. And be sure to use our offer code SKGS for that sweet discount. Let's jump right in with hardware support, some things that you might want to know about going into this. For one, this case supports 420mm AIOs both up front and up top, although running both simultaneously might prove difficult if your radiators are especially thick. You'll find 3 140mm Pure Wings 3 fans in here, although different variants of this case will come with different fan arrangements, including the DX and FX lineups. This is the cheapest variant of the Shadow Base 800, coming in at around $170 USD, which is a lot of money. It can easily go over 200 if you opt for the FX and white variants of this chassis. Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow. Although I will note, as of time of filming, there is a fairly decent sale for this case going on Newegg. This is priced at around 135 USD, which I think is much more reasonable. You'll find this case has plenty of cutouts everywhere you're gonna need them, including for front I/O, HD audio, 24-pin, 8-pin EPS. It's all very well thought out. And of course, we expect airflow to be decent thanks to this perforated front panel, pretty much all the way up and down, as well as several dust filters. Now here's 5 extra things I really like about the Shadow Base 800. It supports much larger eATX motherboards thanks to a slidable cable bar. You can easily pop this vented cover off for additional headroom. Sound damping foam is standard. Cable management will be a breeze thanks to nearly 3 centimeters of clearance behind the motherboard tray, and good old clear tempered glass. None of that tinted stuff. Right, so now it's only fair, here are 5 things I don't exactly like about the Shadow Base 800. Despite its relatively high price tag, this case does not come with a hard drive cage. You have to buy it separately. You have to load your power supply in from the rear with this bracket, which can be a bit annoying, especially if you have tons of cables to shove through this smaller hole. Unless you plan on populating these 2.5-inch drive bays, you'll have some dead space between the bulk of your platform and your fan/radiator assembly. I feel they easily could have snuck in an 8th PCI slot, but instead we just get this little slab of metal. And did I mention the price? I'd like to see it a bit cheaper all the time. So we have a pretty good foundation then for this case, but I think it's time
we building it.
Ah, the sweet, sweet peel on a fresh motherboard that I totally just messed up because it broke right here. Okay, ignore that part. Everything else looks sweet. How about a Core i9-10900K? I know, a few generations old, but nothing wrong with it if you can find it for the right price. Heck, we can even go with some older style Corsair DDR4. Easy does it. There and there. And for cooling, we'll go with the Enermax LickMax Flow 360. LickMax Flow. Who comes up with these names, Enermax? Setting up some of the early mounting gear. And here we go, platform in case. I'm gonna try to be extra careful here because there are some mirror-like finishes on this board that I don't want my grimy fingers touching. Much easier with things laid down. Come on. Thread, for Pete's sake. Front I/O has been wired. Now we're just gonna relocate some fans. I've mounted all 3 up top, which seems a bit weird, but hear me out. Remember, we'll be placing this bad boy up front and it is an absolute chungus. Just gonna carefully squeeze this AIO up front so that we have 3 intakes and 3 exhausts. We could put an extra at the rear, it's not necessary. All of our fans are connected, and just like that, cooler is secure. And check this out, we get a fan for active cooling around our VR MOSFET area, plus we get a cover here, which I think looks quite nice. Kind of hides and breaks up the fan look a bit if you're not into that. And you can of course rotate this however which way you want. It's just magnetic, it clips on with ease. I've also done my best to hide these tubes with included tube combs. That's a nice touch, and that just keeps things a bit more clean in the platform area. And check this out, Be Quiet gave us just enough clearance without having to remove this vent for this Enermax 38mm thick radiator. So now we can put this back and this back. This does not have baked in RGBs like the DX model. If you're looking for that, you're gonna pay a bit more for it. There we go, nice and clean. Now we've just power supply and graphics card remaining. We'll start by taking care of this power supply. Nothing fancy here, just a 700 watt bronze unit from EVGA, though it is quite small for this case, so we'll have Yeah, plenty of space behind it. Almost looks a bit silly how small it is in there. Gonna squeeze in some custom sleeve cables while we have the room, I suppose. The red and gray and black here actually looks pretty sleek. And for the graphics card, how about an RTX 2060? Yes, also a bit of a throwback, but I really like the look of this card. It only requires a single supplemental 8-pin and it's off to the right. So in you go. And there we are. One good thing about these smaller cards is that they don't tend to sag as much as their larger counterparts. One more connection and here we are. And I am shocked at my own impressions of this build. Now that I've taken it in for a few seconds, it's better looking than I thought it was gonna be. Even though I've intentionally chosen a small graphics card and left all of the space in between wide open, it still looks really good. I think this cable bar actually does a really good job filling out the gap between the cooler up front and the bulk of the platform. Now you have to pardon this disclaimer. I feel like I have to address this head on every single time we arrange an AIO this way. The pump here is in the block. The block is sufficiently below barb height and the pump is sufficiently filled. These are weak pumps. They're not gonna constantly pull air down unless you have a massive pocket of air, which shouldn't be the case in any AIO to begin with, but Enermax does include extra coolant in case you wanna top things off. I cannot tell you the number of times I've had to refilm that just to squeeze it all into one take. All right, let's move on. Before we close things up back here, I wanted to give you a peek into how I've arranged things. Actually, no zip ties at all. This was a very simple layout. We've got a few Velcro straps being used, but nothing crazy. And if I'm not mistaken, this should slide on without effort. Yeah, look at that. I could have done this with one finger. Piece of cake. I love that Be Quiet gave us this much space. This is a really quiet build and I haven't even tweaked anything yet. These PureWings 3 fans are actually really good fans considering you're getting them in a case. It's not like Be Quiet's throwing crappy fans in here, and that's one thing I will say about a lot of their chassis. Even in the 500DX, which is a more budget-friendly option, again, a more condensed mid-tower, you're still getting really good fans in that case for the money spent. And that goes a long way, especially when it comes to parsing out other parts of your build. You don't have to spend $100 or more on premium fans since you already get 2 or 3 baked in. So then, all in all, what's my verdict on the Shadowbase 800? Well, let me be clear. I don't feel like I'm in a position ethically to give you my unbiased conclusions based on an unbiased review because, let's be honest, Be Quiet pays a lot of the bills around here. They are a huge sponsor of our Fix or Flop playlist with their product placements. I'm very grateful to them for that. And I think that puts me in a position where I can't fairly critique. So I'm not gonna frame this as a review. I'm not gonna call it a Shadowbase 800 review. I'm just gonna say I'm building in the case and here are my initial thoughts. So again, take these with a grain of salt, but I think the case is largely good. I'm very surprised that I like it as much as I do, given its size. I think they could have squeezed in an A slot. I think this would have fit the build better as a compact full tower versus an oversized mid tower. So interesting marketing there. Maybe they didn't want to step on the new 901 dark base that's coming out soon, but it is kind of in that awkward middle ground. I think they did good with, I guess, the format or the footprint of the chassis, but it does have that weird string attached. And speaking of strings attached, the price, that's gonna be the toughest pill to swallow here. You're either gonna like the design or you're not, and if you don't like the design, just move right along, don't even worry about the price. But if you do like the style, you do like the brand, you do like the airflow and the hardware support, and you're hesitant about the price, please just look around. There are so many cases in the $150 to $200 price range. This jumps squarely into the middle of that. And heck, if you want to jump to the high-end FX version of the Shadowbase 800, it's going to be even tougher to swallow that pill. So tread lightly, but I think that the bare bones version is probably the best value unless you just absolutely see the need to pay $50, $60 more for RGB. I really like the fact that it doesn't have RGB, if you ask me. But I'm not totally digging the price. I think 150, maybe slightly below 150 would be a nice starting point. And then of course with some coupons and discount codes, getting it closer to like 120, 125 would be an epic price for this. But it is what it is, the times we live in. It's tough to find cases that are built to the standards that Be Quiet builds theirs for really good prices. So I don't hold it against them, but I do want you to be aware there are so many other options out there. So please do your due diligence, shop around, check out all the different products that Newegg and Amazon have to offer, and then pick the one that supports the hardware you need it to support and that also looks good and has decent airflow. To me, those are the most important things when it comes to a case. If you like the way it looks, if it supports the hardware you need it to support, and it's not a freaking hot box. I'm gonna have it linked below if you're interested, along with some of the other parts here. If you wanna build this exact system for whatever reason, I don't know if we're gonna be able to find these parts brand new, but I'll have some eBay links down below if you wanna buy something secondhand. Be sure to check those out, as well as the Animax AIO. I think it's a fairly pretty AIO, and it's also pretty beefy, so I expect performance to be great as well. If you guys enjoyed this one, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you have not already, and stay tuned for what is to come. My name is Greg. Thanks for building with me.